Lo que comenzó como una manifestación pacífica contra la gentrificación se transformó en caos y vandalismo.
Hi guys, it's LA and today I'm talking about the gentrification that is happening in Mexico and the recent protests that have sadly destroyed a lot of Mexican shops. If you're new to Susty Talks, welcome. It is a community-centered podcast that sparks genuine conversations around ethical fashion, sustainable change, and intersectional solutions. And it is all self-funded. If you want to support my Depop and my eBay is down in the description, and I am working on some Mexican artisanal collections, so look forward to that. They're not out yet. But mi amado Mexico, Mexico City has so much to lose if gentrification keeps happening. If you know, it's a beautiful location and it's so full of life. It has so much history, it has so much community, and it is such a special place. But all these dang tourists are ruining it, and it's been changing, and there's just a lot of locals who, with good reason, are done. They're done with gentrification and they're not okay with what's continued to happen in their local city. If you've seen, there's so much Western brands, there's so much Western businesses.
Estos son los tres productos americanos que se nos venden muchísimo aquí en México. Número 1, lo que son vitaminas, gomitas para el sueño y productos de salud. Número 2, cereales, debido a que tenemos gran variedad y el cereal es un producto fundamental como desayuno o cena, por ende es muy vendido. Y número 3, todo tipo de galletas, chocolates y productos relacionados, ya sean Oreos, Nutellas, Hershey's o galletas de Mr. Beast. Pregúntanos para más informes.
Everyone's speaking English. So many people are coming from different places to go there, either for like more affordable rent or to retire early, or God knows why they wanted to go to Mexico and be like, yes, this is our new home, even though they don't even have the legal reason to be there. Like they don't even have like the visas or like the proper documents. They're just there scheming their way to like get a good place to live at for cheap. And I'm like, why can't they just stay in the United States if they voted for like Make America Great Again or for Trump, whatever, you know? But predominantly English speaking. They're often like remote workers as well who have been there and working in cafes. There's been such a big influx in cafes. Like Mexicans don't drink lattes. They don't go to cafes to freaking just go on their computer. That's not a thing. Like a lot of local Mexicans have notoriously been those who work the worst jobs, you know? So to have a computer job means that you've had education, that you've had privilege, you've had so many resources at your disposal. But I do think that they're causing too much harm, and I am sure that they're aware of what they're doing. It's just they're justifying it for their own selfish reasons. So when they move in though, like the rent goes up, which is like the worst thing that I want to talk about, because locals are then forced to be displaced because they can't afford the new prices of the rent. Like how are they gonna pay $1,000 for an apartment when it used to be like $400, you know? So they're being pushed out of their own neighborhood, and the local city is losing their essence basically. And it's just weird when you go to Mexico too and everything is in English. Like, are you really in Mexico? Like, no. And there's all these like fancy restaurants that are serving pancakes and avocado now, and I'm like, guys, what is this? What is this? What are we doing? Because Mexicans don't really eat pancakes. Avocado toast is not a Mexican thing. Like, you don't even gotta be Mexican to know that this ain't Mexican. Like, like you can't be that dumb and be like, yeah, this is Mexican. That's not part of the culture. It's just there because you're there. So I think a lot of businesses have been catering to the influx of Western influences of like all these American tourists. And I think that as a past tenant union organizer, we always have to fight for affordable rent and for the locals' interest in what's going on. So I always stand with the locals. Just because I'm Mexican American or have American quote unquote values doesn't mean that I'm okay with what other Americans or other tourists are doing. I have thought about moving to Mexico City, but I would never be able to, you know. It would like make me feel so guilty, and like I know I would be part of the problem. And I come in with USD dollars and I would have to like get pesos, right? So like just the context of like where I'm coming from and like having to transition over, it just proves that I'm an outsider. I could have double citizenship if I applied, because I qualify basically. But I'm still thinking about it. And I literally said to my little brother, the only reason I would move to Mexico City is if I had a guaranteed job already in the United States where I could work remotely and benefit from the cheap rent. And then he was like, isn't that what everyone else is doing? I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Oh, this is kind of skewed. Okay, there we go. It was kind of skewed. Just like what's happening in Mexico. Everything is just like weird. But yeah, I think that people that are not leaving their neighborhoods and still paying the high price and rent are maybe not even enjoying their neighborhood anymore. Like some outsiders have even gone to the point of being like, you can't play your music that loud. Did you guys see that? There was like some people on a beach that were like telling some musicians, don't play that music so loud.
Why?
I don't want any music!
Si eres pobre, a la gente, el mundo te la da muy bien. Un herido se mete a la banda, porque el pobre ya no quiso ser.
And then other people go to restaurants and they're like, this is too spicy. Like, bro, a staple of the Mexican culture is spicy food. What are you talking about? Like, did you not know what you signed up for? Like, do you know what country you're in? So with very good reason, locals are upset and they've been marching, they've been protesting, they've been speaking out because they want to be heard. They're so done with it. They're so done with these gringos. And they want to be respected. They want their interests to be acted on by their local government, and they want their neighborhood back. They wanted theirs again. They don't want all these Western brands and influences and like profit-driven agendas anymore. They've spoken out. Like locals have been speaking out about this. This hasn't just been recent. They've been talking about the local failures of the government to basically address the root issues, which is the government. You know, the government is the one that is like catering to the foreigner. It's catering to the brands, the businesses, catering to money. So it's not just necessarily the foreigners. It's not just necessarily the Karens doing all this stuff. It's everyone. It's the government. It's landlords. It's brands. It's businesses that are coming together and just prioritizing and trying to grab the foreigners' money as best as they can. So yeah, it's just making it hard for everyone else, the locals, the hardworking people, to actually afford to live. So yeah, I also think that I want to talk about something that's been happening, which is kind of like been bothering and rubbing others the wrong way. But when there's been these protests, right, like a lot of times people start to rob stores. I don't know what comes over them, but maybe it's like an intrusive thought of like, okay, like I can finally rob a store. You know how sometimes you're like poor and you think, oh, I'm gonna go rob a bank. You know that intrusive thought?
You're crazy!
Now when they're in this march full of like angry people with due reason, right, they're like, oh, I can go rob the store right now. I technically can, right? We're angry, we're against everything or anti-establishment, so I can hate capitalism, I can hate these stores and just like rob it. Maybe that's their logic. I have no idea. I'm kind of simulating a robbery right here, but I've never done so. I've noticed that they've been attacking like stores that have some sort of like Western appeal to it, or like Western look, or it was in English, and they just like would smash it and like take stuff out and go running with it. So a lot of people were like, is this still part of the protest, or did we go too far? And I saw a lot of comments on social media posts, and some people were saying that it wasn't part of the protest, that the robbers just were interested in the money and didn't actually care about the cause. And some even went on to speculate that they weren't even feminists and not even part of the community, like they weren't really locals per se, which is a very interesting take. But that's some things that I've seen, and a lot of other people are like, oh, they were just trying to take advantage of the chaos. But others were like, no, like it is part of the protests. It is part of the anger that we have. It is part of the resistance, because people are tired of being pushed around and told to behave while they can't even afford to pay rent or like afford food. But also another thing that emerged that I found really interesting as a sustainable fashion advocate is about the debate about who even own these stores in the first place. Because yeah, they can look Western, yeah, they can be in English, they can serve tourists, right, with the high cost that they have in the store, but like sometimes the stores being destroyed, right, are owned by local Mexicans that are just trying to make more by putting their target demographic towards the tourists. You know, for example, right, as a business owner, you can be like, am I gonna sell towards the locals who have less money, or am I going to sell to the tourists who have more money? Well, you can just put the price higher and like sell the same thing for more to the tourists who has more of the money. So it's like more money for like the same thing. So when they get robbed, it may be hurting the local community itself, which is very interesting to think about. And when you're within these protests, you don't really know who the enemy is when you're just randomly attacking stores. Because like, how do you know if you're like hurting a Western owned business or a locally owned business from a local Mexican? You don't really know that when you're like smashing a window from the outside if you don't know anything about the business. Often enough to like, if you're working in retail, you're often like working class and you're often a local. Like, would a tourist ever really work at a retail spot? Like, no, they got their fancy little computers, sipping their latte.
Hello guys! So recently I've been discovering these amazing new hidden gems in Mexico City. I just found this one called Café Garat. Make sure to try the molletes. It's like a Mexican deep dish pizza. Also, you can get drinks like lattes, coffee, and cappuccinos. Isn't it crazy that Mexicans have coffee shops? I thought they would only drink tequila. I even tried this latte with chocolate. That is actually the word in Spanish for chocolate. So let me know if you get to visit this totally awesome, super hidden gem in Mexico City that I discovered. And remember to like and follow if you want more hidden gem recommendations. Bye!
Most likely they're not working retail, so if you've destroyed a small business in the name of justice but took away the job of a working class local, it's kind of a contradiction. I'm just saying, it's kind of a contradiction. Not only did you destroy a shop owned by a local Mexican, but you inherently like destroy the jobs of local Mexicans working the shop. Kind of did not do good. You did not get good. No, that's not good. So yeah, it's just sad. Like, imagine being a local retail worker and then the store gets destroyed and you're like, dang, how am I gonna feed my child now? How am I gonna afford my rent now? So you inherently like just made things worse, right? And I think maybe the goal is to hurt like corporations that don't help the locals, you know? But again, it's almost like the same thing. Like, local workers are employed under these major corporations, whether you want to address it or not. And they can be students, they can be young families, they can be, you know, established locals that just had a pivot and like work wherever they could. So these are like moms, these are neighbors, these are uncles, these are daughters that are being affected. This isn't just corporations that you've robbed from anymore. But I don't like capitalism. I'm not trying to justify capitalism. I think capitalism sucks and in all its forms. And I just think tourism is so violent when it doesn't help to protect the locals. And I do want to note that a lot of brands and businesses should have some responsibility towards the locals as well. They should have like some social responsibility program, especially given where you're at and what issue there is. But I just feel like the greater harm here is like those tourists that are stealing from the Mexican culture, who is stealing from the labor of underpaid workers who are basically being stripped of their homes. The American culture of like going in and doing whatever the hell they want is crazy. But yeah, the question though, getting back to my point, is like, does robbing actually fix anything in the long run against gentrification? I personally don't think so, but I think the point that a lot of protests and like robberies have in common is like anger. People are angry. They're so done with what is happening, and they're trying to find anything they can do. They want affordable rent. They want good jobs. They want to be able to have a good life. They want to feel like they're not being pushed out anymore. They're not being erased anymore. They want to be able to eat their food in peace. They want to have their music playing loudly on the beach. They want to speak their own language with due reason. Like, I was like raised with Mexican parents, and they find their culture such a comfort in midst of chaos, in midst of social inequity and injustices, and they hold on to it as best as they can here in the United States. So I'm sure that other Mexicans, in midst of like all this gentrification and Western influences, are doing the same and trying to find something that remind them that they're not being, erased or like oppressed or like, westernized. So I do think that the proudness that we have in our culture keeps them being strong and to keep pushing back. And I do think the tourists are the ones that need to explain themselves a bit more of like their logic of why they would ever want to do this to Mexico and Mexicans in general. Like, what gives them the sense of audacity to go and like take over, and what gives them the ability to be like, oh, I'm gonna go to Mexico and find loopholes that make that happen. Like, I don't think any amount of selfishness and greed will ever justify what they're doing onto the local community. Like, I can never see myself being like, yeah, well, at least I'm saving money, or at least I have a better life. Like, at the expense of what though? Like, you have to think about the big picture here. Like, you just took away the chance for someone else to have a good life because you decided to come here with your little fancy computer and drink your lattes. Like, I don't know what's going through people's mind except that greed, except that like sense of, oh, it's going to be for me. It's going to be for my benefit. Like, what? But to touch on some more like positive bits for this podcast, I do want to talk about how there can be some good alternative solutions. Like, I think a lot of things that can go well in Mexico is like rent control. So like locals having a bit more of a priority within the government, having more larger developments like prioritize their voice within urban planning, having more like stricter laws that make it harder for landlords to throw out residents, and like just prioritizing Mexican renters in general over foreigners is essential. So yeah, I think the tension in Mexico is like just like a compounded thing. Like, all this inequalities just meshing together, especially with the Trump administration criminalizing Latinos in the US, is another element that has caused a lot of local Mexicans to get angry. Like, how is it that Mexicans here are criminalized, but when US citizens are going to Mexico, they're not criminalized? So I feel like a lot of people are like, let's criminalize the US citizens in Mexico, which is not what I'm trying to do or say here. But I'm always one to go towards regulations as a solution, and that way we can target those in power, those that are actually making the rules and letting all this happen, because it's not just about the tourists, it's about the systems that are letting the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But I did see that like in Mexico City, there was like 26,000 properties that are like just Airbnbs, which is crazy. 26,000 properties in Mexico City are just Airbnbs. And this is according to Inside Airbnb, which is an advocacy organization that tracks the company's impact on residential communities through data. So can you imagine 26,000 homes, instead of being Airbnbs, could be like legit homes for local Mexicans? And if you have a big family, which is often the case for Mexicans, I don't know, but like imagine like five a 5-family unit, right? And you have 26,000 properties, you can house over 100,000 people. 100,000 people, but instead they're Airbnbs. So yeah, like the robberies are messy and people are getting really confused and uncomfortable about what's happening about that, right? But like, I do think, again, there's deep pain, deep anger, especially when they see so many Airbnbs everywhere, and we can't ignore their reality. People are trying to survive, and survival often doesn't look very polite or clean. It looks often very desperate, very loud, very angry. But there has been some initiatives though, but they haven't paused. So like, for example, Mexico City's government approved one of the most ambitious rent control laws since the 1940s to basically control prices and to set caps on shorter rentals to 180 nights a year. But if you think about it, 180 nights is half a year. So they've allowed tourists to basically stay half a year. And I think that's how much time you have as a tourist to be in a country that's not yours. So yeah, that doesn't really work out for locals either ways. But I mean, it's supposedly ambitious, right? But sadly, the enforcement of short-term rental legislation has been put on pause because of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. So they've basically prioritized soccer over affordable rent, which is kind of crazy and it's sad. Like, how are you just going to pause laws and regulations? But yeah, we can argue about laws and regulations and tactics all day, honestly. But the real question here is like the people left behind. Are we listening to them? Are we serving them? Are they actually living a good life? I don't really think so. And I don't think they can really call home anymore when they're being so pushed out. So yeah, there is a lot of progress to be made. A lot of things need to be changed. But yeah, the lasting question I have to say is like, are locals being listened to? And if they're not, they're essentially failing them, right? So let me know what you thought. I'm a Mexican American with a lot of like American culture and like values and like biases. So if you have any more biases as a local in Mexico, let me know what I missed. I would love to hear. I'm always interested in what local communities have to say to serve their interests versus anyone else's. But yeah, until next time, peace and love, Ellie. Bye.